Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Real Recovery. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Oh, that happy music says it's time for Real Recovery. So glad you joined us tonight. Bill Arnold on this side of the studio, and just across the way, a man who expects to be seated at a restaurant without reservations, only to discover McDonald's doesn't take reservations. George P. Fraser. Hello, George.
Pretty tough to get out of the car for George F.
I know. You'd much rather go through the drive-thru, wouldn't you?
Totally.
Just stay right in the car. All right, George, we got a great show tonight. We've got quite a story. We've got a guest tonight that's spent, I think, about 10 years in prison for drugs and the drug-related lifestyle.
So 10 years more than we did.
Well, 10 years more than me.
Yeah.
You did a handful of days, didn't you, in jail?
Seemed like 10 years.
Yeah, probably. You wouldn't have done well in jail or prison. You didn't do well.
It's interesting. We talk a lot about the Department of Corrections and what a great evangelical tool it is, because when the door shuts on you, you really have time to think, and you're beaten into a state of reasonableness. But there's a lot of people, Bill, that we've worked with that doing time's not a big deal.
That shocks us.
And I don't know what a consequence is then.
Yeah, that's shocking. They talk about just it's a timeout, or they have to go sit. They call it sitting for 4 years. I go, whoa, that's a different mentality.
It's like, I've got to go to camp for 10 years.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me or you. But tonight we're going to bring our guest on, time permitting. I don't know how well we're going to do here, George, in the opening segment, but you never know because we get on a roll and things go well. But I want to talk tonight about Step 12 because that's about ministry. And Step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening. As the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So do comment on this amazing Step 12.
Well, you did that really well, and I like the emphasis on all our affairs. What we find for a lot of us, we think our big problem is our sinful behavior rather than our sinful being, okay? That, well, if I quit drinking, if I quit doing cocaine, I'm going to be fine because I'm basically a really good person. I just have a bad habit. And I go overboard with it, but, I'm pretty honest and everything else. And what you don't realize is if you're doing those kind of things, you're not a good person. You're not honest. I've worked with a lot of people, and I only work with men. Bill, the same with you. And guys will tell me, I know I'm an alcoholic, but I'm a good parent to my kids. And I always tell them you can't be both. And They think about that, and you go, how many times did you not do something with your son or daughter because you wanted to go using? Mm-hmm. We all do that. And I think you really have to get honest with yourself. Going back, we say these steps aren't linear, they're circular. When I hear you read that in all my affairs, I think I have to go back to step 1. I haven't had a drink or a drug in a long time, but do I have control of my emotions? Do I have control of my fantasy life? Do I have control of my greed and envy and jealousy and all those things? And really what it's saying to me is just because you've gotten there and had the spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and you're carrying the message, are you carrying it to yourself? Are you walking it out? Did you shortchange your boss? Are you being true with your taxes? All areas. And I think it's a tall order to us, Bill, because I think for a lot of us as we go along, there were things that didn't bother us before, and now they do. For me, I know several years ago, don't laugh at this, I'm being vulnerable here live on the air. I used to be kind of a wise guy. And I'd always say, well, if you're offended by that, it's a joke. And several years ago, I realized I'm not okay with offending anybody. If I do, I'm sorry. And it's little things like that that you just go, well, hey, I haven't had a drink in several years. Get off my back. I'm a good guy. I pay my taxes. Well, most of them. A couple deductions in there might be a little shady, but Not me personally, if you're listening, because I try to do it in all my affairs. But that's what they're talking about. And just because you go to church and you give them some money, how are you treating people in your life? How are you treating people that don't agree with you, maybe politically, or about your church that you go to? What about people who go to a different church? All these things, Bill. And I think the longer we're in it, we see how sinful our nature really is. And step 12 will get me back to step 1. I'm powerless over everything. I need to believe that God brought me to this place because he has a job for me, and I need to turn over everything to him. Not just my drinking, my life, my thought life. What am I doing for recreation, all that. But the other thing I think we want to get to on this is the real highlight. You don't get sober and saved without God having a job for you to do. And I was at a gathering this week of like-minded people, and a friend of mine got a 50-year chip. And 2 other guys celebrated 15 years. And we were talking about it as we were having breakfast, that none of us wanted to do it, and God did for us what we couldn't do for ourselves and didn't want to do for ourselves, and we wouldn't have missed it. We took steps that we didn't think would work, and we got results we can't deny. And if you're struggling out there, maybe the reason is you have a secret. You're not looking at something in your life. And our old saying is, our secrets keep us sick. And the fallout for me always was, Bill, I would go, well, that's not the problem, but I'm not going to share it with anybody. The problem is not sharing it. The problem is I'm making the decision that it's okay, and we have to give everything to the Lord, everything.
And George, in step 12, there's the emphasis is on helping others in order to change your own life, isn't it?
It is.
Because when you help others, you're changing yourself.
Well, the reason you have an addiction is you're selfish, egocentric, self-seeking. You want to be your own God. And the way to take care of that is to try to do something for other people. And I think what you're going to find is you start caring about other people. And you have people that care about you when you first come in, when you don't care for yourself. And it's something you want to be a part of that's bigger than you are.
Mm-hmm. You are listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. Ryan is on the board, and we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to bring up Pastor Juan, who's got an incredible story. If you'd like to know more about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus or to chat with someone who can help, just text the word faith to 41224. That's faith to 41224. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. So glad to have Juan Martinez with us tonight. God has transformed him from having a kill, steal, and destroy mentality to a seed-sowing mindset, spreading the good news to all who will listen. I love that transformational thought, George. It inspires me, and I can't wait to hear his story.
That's a very interesting hook. I think we need to get to that.
I agree. Juan, so glad to have you with us, and thank you for making time.
Oh, I'm honored to be with you guys, and thank you for making time for me and for doing all that you do, Bill and George. Thank you.
Well, we want to hear your story. We want to hear how God has worked in your life, and I know you've got some highs and some lows. So let's start with just what it was like for you growing up in your family of origin and what life was like for you.
Absolutely. Growing up, I'm Puerto Rican, so, a little bit on the, salsa. I'm married to a Mexican, so salsa for them and salsa for us are two different things, right? Salsa for us, it's a lot of dancing, partying. Salsa for them is dip your chip, right? So grew up Puerto Rican, parents Puerto Rican, but born in the United States. I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, right outside, maybe about 10 minutes away from Manhattan. I grew up in Hoboken, though, which is, coming out, we had Maxwell House Coffee across the street. and we could tell when it was going to rain because we could smell the coffee, right? And
Ooh.
right across the street, right across the Hudson River, right there, right. What people paid $300 for, we had that view every day of our lives back then. It was the Twin Towers and the Empire State Building and the whole New York City skyline. I always tell people, man, sometimes we take life for granted and we go buy things. That today I go back and it's so special and I want to show everybody and take pictures of it. And like I said, now they charge $300 so you can see the skyline, and it was always there, right? And growing up, I have the classic my dad left story. My parents got divorced at an early age. I was about 8. And my mom, she did the best she could. She raised me in religion per se, not her exactly knowing she was doing this, but raised Catholic. And of course, this is my story, I tell people. So, I love my Catholic brothers and sisters, but this is how what happened to me. Um, you know, they would go to church, and my dad really never went to church even when he was around, but we would go. And in those times, I would hear the priests talk about certain things, and I didn't really see that at home. And most of my family that went to church, they all still partied on the weekends, and nobody really talked about the Bible. Nobody really evangelized, They had little parties they did and stuff. But never none of the things that I read today in the Bible and that has impacted my life today. In those times, what ended up happening was I listened to a lot of music, watched a lot of movies like Scarface and all these movies that, interesting enough, what was a lie looked true. What was a lie looked like the truth because they said it in the songs. I saw it in the movies, and I would go outside, and because I didn't have a male father figure, I just gravitated to the males that I thought were cool or they were doing something. And since they said it in the songs and the movies, man, I thought those guys were the truth. I thought church was a lie because Father who loves you and is there all the time and closer, close to you and all this stuff. It's like when I prayed, I thought God was far, far away. And I hoped that maybe he'll listen. Maybe he'll give me my wish. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got raised. I got raised in that kind of stuff and a lot of parties, family parties. Puerto Ricans throw a party for everything, whether it doesn't matter. It could be Columbus Day and they're gonna have a party. It's just the way they are, and so or the way we are. But now I throw parties for Jesus. But yeah, getting raised, I did that. Tried to escape, run from crime and selling drugs. So I decided, had a good friend who joined the Navy, and I thought, well, I guess that's for me. So I joined the Navy, trying to run away. I always tell people, hey, stop running away from yourself. If you was to stand right now in the room and try to run away from yourself, you know what? No matter where you go, there you are. If you run around in the room, by the time you're done running, you're gonna see that you wound up where you wound up. And so no matter where I went, no matter how many marriages I changed, because I ended up having a baby at an early age, all those things, changing the state wasn't going to change me. But so I joined the Navy. I got an honorable discharge. I don't know how on earth, but during that time I was selling drugs, and now I was wearing a uniform to do it. And, not proud of it, but proud that I got to serve my country. And it did teach me a lot of things. But when I got out, I only did what I knew best, and that was go back to selling drugs. And, did that. I've done about 23 years. I say 23 years of incarceration behind the bars I placed around my heart, but I did 10 years in physical prison, in and out. It probably, and sometimes I think about it, it's probably a little more, but I rounded it off to 10, because I didn't want to, start thinking about all that stuff. But then about 10 years, maybe 11, something like that. And yeah, I had kids at a young age, and those kids, they didn't have a father, they didn't have anything because I didn't know how to be that. I only did what I knew. So yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell uh my upbringing all the way until I got to my adult years.
So was prison a cost of doing business for you, or? just a lifestyle thing?
Uh, Prison, was that a cost? It was definitely consequences of what I thought was one big party. But, in those times, interesting enough, I kept climbing up the ladder of success, I guess, in the drug world. And I always used to say, you know what? They're only mad because they can't tax what I'm doing. And so I had this, belief drives your behavior. Belief drives your behavior. And I always thought to myself, now looking back, I go, man, I really believe that what I was doing was normal and that some people are doctors and are doing it. And because, I started selling drugs to like dentists and doctors and all kinds of people. So I just said, man, I'm just the guy that delivers what they need to have a good time. So that was my belief and it always drove my behavior.
Juan, I'm curious because with Dad gone at age 8, and you said that you would find probably someone in the neighborhood that would become your partial shepherd. I mean, someone that would come alongside or you looked up to, and it sounds like you gravitated into a lifestyle that was a party lifestyle. Did you start with using drugs and then find out that the best way to get access to drugs is to start selling them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. Here's I guess the misconception that I'm always trying to tell people, that some know, but men is ran by their desires, right? And desires is what causes you to sin, and it actually says it leads you to spiritual death. We know right now we got in America, we got a lot of people trying to legalize marijuana and legalize all this stuff, and I'm like, that's just making it worse, even though everybody thinks it's making it better. Because when it all started, it was like fun and party. It was just a party, a couple beers. What's the big deal? Eventually, though, when you say, well, what about pot smokers? Okay, there's probably like a handful if we're gonna go in the whole planet that doesn't lead to other stuff. Like, right, one day you're at a party and your marijuana guy don't pick up the phone or he don't have it or something happens and somebody shows up with something else. And that day you're introduced to something else. And you keep graduating into those things that kill, steal, and destroy the very life that God has given people. It destroys everything in your life. So what started off as something fun and not a big deal led me to different crowds. It led me to different things, and those things took control of my life. And you hear often that life was not manageable. Well, yeah, it was impossible to manage.
So you got a lot of lifestyle going. You're selling drugs and you're rolling the dice. I mean, obviously you got caught at some point and ended up going to prison more than once.
Yep. Yeah, the last time, so that's happening and I'm coming out and it was so easy for me to get out. I would just get out, I had bail money, you get out, you do it again. And it's almost like catch me if you can type thing. And again, beliefs drive behavior. So I just believed everybody did it. I believed everybody partied. I never knew Christianity existed. And when I say Christianity, I'm talking about not just those who believe, but those who believe and follow. I never knew that there was this life. Never. Even being around church and all that, because everybody just looked the same. They still went out, they still cussed, they're still having sex, still doing everything. They never knew this existed and that it could be so good. Never in a million years. What started off for me this last time I got incarcerated. I got incarcerated. I was facing 25 years. Woo! Talk about you start thinking about life. Right before I get incarcerated, I have I think TBN did like a reenactment or something. Been on some television kind of just talking about the story, but I'm in a car and I can count in my two hands how often I was sober in 23 years. I was probably more, maybe one hand. I was more, I was high. I thought people that were sober, something was wrong with them because I was high every day. And, you know, this day I was sober. And so I get in the car and I look up to the clouds, and as crazy as this might sound, I just start crying profusely. I just start crying. The girl kind of look in the movies, her, what's going on? That kind of thing. And so I got all this meth in the back car. And I feel like when I look at the clouds and I'm crying, 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 I can hear something in my spirit, man, something in my soul. I can hear, why are you killing, stealing, and destroying the very lives I'm giving people? Now, let me tell you, I had never read the Bible. I didn't know John 10:10. I didn't know any of that. But that's exactly what I heard. Why you can listen. You said you're turning teachers into prostitutes, housewives into prostitutes, men. So I just went down this long list and I just started crying, crying, crying. Let me tell you, seconds later, it's like a faucet was turned on and it turned off. So I just stopped crying. And so I was like, what is going on? And so then the girl's voice gets normal, like, hey, we're going to go to jail for a long time. I'm like, she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. But I had this thought. So I go deliver these drugs and I'm telling people, hey, man, I feel like God's talking to me. And they're laughing. They're like, man, you're high. And I'm like, no, I really feel like he's trying to get my attention. So I don't know how to follow Jesus. I never read my word, never read my Bible, didn't have no community, didn't have anything. So I knew it was God. I just couldn't put it together. And so then I go, they try to rob me in Fort Worth. They beat me half to death. I go through all that and I still am not getting sentenced. So I eventually get locked up facing the 25. I wind up doing 4. But while I'm there, I meet a guy. And he says he's a pastor.
Okay, I think at this point, Juan, I'm going to take a little
Yep.
break because when we come back, I can't wait to hear this conversation you've had with this pastor in prison. Juan Martinez is our guest. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We'll be right back. We're back with Juan Martinez, hearing his story, and he had a conversation with a pastor in prison. And just for a little more backdrop on Juan, he is currently a senior pastor himself at Get Wrapped Church in Spring, Texas, and also founder of Love, Live, Lead Ministry. Since 2010, the ministry has seen thousands of people say yes to Christ. So we're very excited that he has been taken from a kill, steal, and destroy mentality to one of leading others to Christ through the good news of the gospel. So, Juan, tell us what happened with this pastor in prison.
Oh, yeah. So my wife to this day believes that guy was an angel. I have a good memory when it comes to like knowing what God said to me, or just moments in life, and even moments where I didn't don't remember something. If I talk about something long enough, the name pops up. And every time I share the story, I have to say, I'm always thinking the name's just going to come out and I'm going to go look for this guy and tell him what he's done. My wife says, no, he was an angel. And so what happens is I go there and this guy tells me, I'm here for you. I'm a pastor. I only know a priest, a bald guy. I don't know pastor. So he explains a little to me and he says, I'm here for you. He said, the only reason I got locked up. And so at first I go, you're in trouble like everybody else. Stop it. And so he goes, no, the only reason I'm here is because, I have an ex-wife addicted to drugs, stuff, and she still comes around and starts to fight when I don't give her money. So basically got in the car, she threw the stuff. Cops came because of the argument and neighbors calling. She threw something under his chair. I think it was a crack pipe or something. And so he goes to jail. He goes, but I'm innocent and I'm here for you. So now I've realized that I'm here for you. So I go, all right, I walk away and I go, here for me. And I sit down in my cell and I start saying to myself, he's here for me. So I wake up the next morning, I'm going to talk to this guy. There's this other side, there's a gate that's right in between both of us, but he's on the other side. It's like a two U's shaped connected together, and the gate's in the middle of the top of the two U's. And so I look, and he's laying on the floor, prostrated to the ground on top of the blanket. And I'm like, okay, he's gonna get up anytime. And so he doesn't get up. I go work out. I come back, take a shower. He's not up yet. Make myself a soup. I eat a little something. He's not up yet. Finally, about an hour, 45 minutes, an hour later, I'm like, what? This guy gets up. I go, hey. He comes to the gate. I go, what were you doing? He says, if I'm here for you, I need to be in prayer. I said, how many Our Fathers did you say? Because type of prayer I understood was the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I knew it in English and in Spanish, and no matter what I did, that usually have a little joke and I go, man, the time I started talking to God, he was probably like, finally, this guy's having a conversation with me. He sounded like a broken record for 36 years. So he starts telling me, I go, you were praying? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm praying for you. So he starts talking to me about read the Bible, chewing the cud, some of the shows I should be watching in the morning. And time went on, and I had went to my cell and started reading, and the best way I could describe it is like Beetlejuice when the hand came out of the bowl to pull his face into the bowl. That's what happened to me with a Bible. And he came out the next day. I started telling him, man, it was so good. He goes, what? He goes, I go, God. And he goes, no, you gotta chew it. Like the cut, he said, you gotta remember that first Snickers that you get when you're incarcerated. And he goes, out here you eat a Snickers and you just eat it and you go, that was good and it satisfied your hunger. In there, you eat your first Snickers and you take a bite and you kind of wrap the rest up and put it to the side, and you can chew and taste every layer. It's just so good. He said that's how meditating on the word is. It's so good that usually you're trying to save it for the next day, but you wind up eating the rest of it because you've tasted and seen that it was good. And so that happens. I go one morning, to go bring them some extra food because I had the favor of Joseph. They made me the head cook. And so I go to bring them and they go, hey, the guy's not here. He was innocent. And I never got to see him again. But what that guy did for me was introduce me to Jesus and walk with me. And it changed. I mean, I caught fire. We're doing revivals in the prisons, man. We're talking, I'm doing prayer in the morning, prayer by the tree. I started leading services on Saturday nights where I would introduce the guest speaker and have a few minutes and just started walking this thing out and reading and studying and going to school. People used to tell me, man, you're way too happy. You're in prison. And I used to tell them, man, no, you're in prison. I'm in college. And so they would all laugh because I kept saying I was in college. Well, I utilized the time and the thing that I might have looked at as a storm to let God get my attention and actually walk out what I should be walking out. And so I walked it out as a college, did some Baptist, Louisiana Baptist University. They would send me stuff. Exodus would send me stuff. American Bible Academy. So I would take all the tests and kept walking and walking. Last year, I finally got a doctorate. So it was pretty cool of what God can do in someone's life when you let him hold you by the hand and walk it out.
That's fascinating. Kind of stuck on the Snickers bar. I've been a long time at that, but it's interesting how when you're starving for something good, you realize, it, but when you get it every day, it becomes normal. And I like it when you talked about the beginning of the verse of John 10:10, about the thief comes to kill, murder, and destroy,
Yes.
but the Son of
Yes.
Man comes to give us life abundantly.
Yes.
You thought the partying was working, but it just started owning you. You break free, and now you can't get enough of the good stuff. It's really fun to hear that.
Yeah, you described that so good, George. Like that was a good description. It's true. A lot of times when I go and I speak to people that knew me before, I said, "Man, you guys waited for me to bring you what you would say, the good stuff. You would wait for me and you would do whatever it took to get that." I said, if you believed me then, and I was full of lies, and I was actually, because the lie is not the problem, is when you believe the lie, right? Now you're in deception. If you see a lie and you don't believe it, then you don't fall to deception, right? And so, I had bit the apple, I digested the apple, just as I feel many have. And while living under the lie, I was blinded. And I always tell them, if you thought I was going to give you the good stuff then, how much more should you be listening to me now? And
What?
then they're like getting a conundrum. I think the first outreach we ever did, we had over 1,000 people there because they couldn't believe the fact that, think about it. I'm telling them, I think God's talking to me. And then they see my life now and they're like, this guy was serious.
Great laugh. So, Juan, tell us
Hey.
about your heart surgery and how you found freedom in the Word of God.
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you something. There's obviously I wrote this book. It's called Prison Break. And in that book, let me tell you something. If I can, just give you a preface before I say this heart surgery, because I think it goes together. Okay. So, you know, when I was incarcerated, I always thought, um, you know, I didn't think I was incarcerated. I actually thought I was free. It was just part of the Monopoly board, land on jail and go there. But then I realized when I go talk to these guys now, I go, hey, you think when you walk out the door, you're going to be free, but you're really incarcerated. You were incarcerated before you got incarcerated. This is just where you wound up. But same thing with the children of Israel. Like, doesn't matter if you keep winding up in the same thing, in the same place over and over and over and over, that means you're stuck and incarcerated. I later become a pastor. I write the book because when I'm pastoring people and I'm thinking, wow, a lot of these people sound like the people that are behind bars, wishing they could be on the other side. The only difference is that somebody else is holding the key for those guys over there in the natural, but they could be free while in there because I was. And out here, Jesus set them free. They have freedom, but they're sitting in a cell not wanting to come out. So when we talk about heart surgery, I think it's important to know a few things. I think it's important to identify false belief systems because, and know the truth and the truth will set you free. John 8, right? If you know the truth, if you continue in my word, if you continue in what I say, you shall have knowledge of the truth and the truth will set you free. Jesus came to set the captives free. Oh, what does that mean? Did he go down to the local jail, open the door, and they came out? No, it means that he came he's to testify of the truth. He came to set you free from the lie you believe, the deception you've been living, the blindness that you're going through. That's what he came to set you free from. So when we talk about heart surgery, you got to understand this. The Lord gave me this. You go to a doctor in the natural, and you got to let the doctor diagnose the problem. In this case, you're going to let God diagnose your heart. He's going to do heart surgery. He's going to diagnose your heart. And guess what? Every single person, doesn't matter if you have good morals, doesn't matter where you're at, everyone is convicted of a crime. Everyone. We're all guilty of sin. We're all guilty. So when I sat with the Lord, he diagnosed my heart. When he diagnosed my heart, I have to accept the truth. When you accept the truth, you got to get in alignment with that truth and become one with that truth. And then you got to guard your heart. And so now I'm going to give you all this because I like taking deep spiritual things and making them practical. I have this good friend, Pastor Megan, and she at one point called me to the hospital. I'm going to show you how this applies in the natural. Apostle Paul says, look at everything and see God in it.
Yeah.
And
Well, let's do that on the other side of the break because we need to take a short break. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. When we come back, we're going to find out all that Juan has regarding these amazing revelation God's given to him. We'll be right back. We are back with Real Recovery. George, I think we've got some momentum going. I think Juan's going to really bring us some good stuff here.
Can't wait to hear what the conversation resulted in.
Yeah, Juan, let's learn what you were talking about right before the break. You were winding up. Yeah, getting ready to throw some fastballs.
Yes, sir. So Bill and George, check this out. Check this out. So, I go to the hospital and she has a son named Vaughn who was about 8 years old at that time. And here it is. His equilibrium was off. He was walking. I said, what's wrong with him? I said, well, he's walking like he's drunk. And, we know he's 8 years old, so he's not drinking. And his brain was hurting. His head was hurting. And so let me tell you what the doctor did. He walks in, and you are all familiar with this, but I want you to think about this in your spiritual life. Okay, I'm just going to show you something in the natural that applies in the spiritual. He walks in and he says, hey, what's the problem? Remember we said you have to let God tell you what the problem is. He says, what's the problem? He says, well, his equilibrium, he says, no, he's walking around like he's drunk and he's only 8 and his head hurts. He says, okay, have you been taking anything? You know why they ask you that? Because if they say, well, he took some Tylenol, but, his head still hurts and he's still acting like that. It only went away for a little bit. That's showing the doctor that it's a deeper level problem. It's not just the surface level, like he was out in the sun too long or he got hit in the head. So when something continues and persists, God wants to tell you that it's a deeply rooted issue. It's something deeper. What happens in the doctor's office? They send you to the x-ray. You get an x-ray. You're getting the x-ray, and I call that the Holy Spirit, right? This is where the Holy Spirit is showing you and pinpointing the lie or the problem that is causing you to behave the way you behave. So what happens is in this case, they say, hey, there's a tumor that's pushing against his brain. They say, but no problem, Mom. We'll do a little incision. We'll get it out. We'll patch him up. He'll have to come back, and do some things, but he should be fine. So everybody's waiting for the surgery, and so should you at this moment. God tells you what's wrong. He shows you in the x-ray what it is. You know that they pulled this thing out, and today this young man is 16 and he's about to graduate high school and get his license.
Wow. Wow.
So we could try to say, hey, stop walking that way. Hey, stop, your head is hurting. Stop doing some of the things you're doing. No, you had to go find the problem. Allow God to point it out through the x-ray of the Holy Spirit. And then we're just going to go in there and he's going to remove that thing. And the beautiful part, if you guys remember the verse that I always say at the back end of the surgery, he had to change his diet plan. He had a new diet plan. He had to change some of the things he did, because when God removes that through the word, he tells you to guard your heart, the core, the center of your being, where your intellect sits, where your soul sits. Guard that. Be careful what you let in, because those things will drive your behavior. Because if you want to see where the issues of life are coming from, it's from your heart.
I love that. We were talking before the show, and I was telling Bill about my recovery a little bit, and I never really changed till somebody said, it doesn't matter if you think you're a drug addict or not. You are. And you're doing all this other stuff. It's not helping. You got to accept that and do something about it. And that's just, it was so simple, but I didn't want to be that, but I was. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then in time, here's the thing. I've even changed that. If I keep calling myself a tomato, I'm going to jump in a salad. So as time has unfolded, I usually, I say things like, man, I'm a son. I'm a son of God. Like, he has transformed my heart, man. I am more than a conqueror. Come on, I am all these amazing things. I belong part of a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. The more I start getting an identity in that, my behavior takes care of itself. If I try to change my behavior without changing my inside. See, because I haven't gotten high in 16 years, what happened? My beliefs changed. How I see myself, how I see God. It doesn't matter what God thinks about you if you don't believe it. If you don't believe it, I was telling somebody today that say, do you believe that blessed are the peacemakers, for they are sons of God? Absolutely. And this person don't bring peace into the situation. So I go, you don't believe it. You know about that verse, so you say it. But it doesn't show in your fruit because you actually don't believe it. If you believe it, you look for opportunities to be the peacemaker, to bring Jesus into situations. Hey, at home, marriages should almost be fighting over who's going to bring the peace. But we don't do that because we don't see ourselves as sons.
The reason I refer to myself as a recovering addict, I need to hear that. And I go to the Bible always, Pastor. And
Yes,
Paul said that he was the chief of sinners. So
yeah,
I'm going to ride with that one.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one. But as you notice in the context of time, that was me. I was the worst of the worst, right? We are the worst of the worst. that just reminds us of our dependency with Jesus, right?
Totally.
I'm horse to the world, so I
Totally.
need to be I gotta hold up. I would have been the guy, and instead of touching the hem of the garment, they would have said, and some Puerto Rican guy was holding on to his left leg and wouldn't let him go.
All the energy drained out. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
what I really
Totally.
what I really like about your story is we always talk about that our recovery and our walk has to be better and more fun than our using. And I don't know you, but I can just hear it. The joy, the gratitude, the excitement. And I don't think there's anything more exciting than seeing dead people come alive again because of the Lord. Fair?
There. That is like 110%. Like that's the thing. They say you can't lead because sometimes, oh, I'm trying to get this guy. And I said, look, you can't lead a horse to water, but you could sure make him thirsty. I mean, something I learned about the bar is that they're gonna fill it with salt so you can just keep drinking. So I'm not trying to make anybody be anything. I'm just trying to remain salty. And if I can be salty, you're gonna want what I have. You're gonna get thirsty enough to say, man, you're gonna have to eventually ask me something because I'm gonna keep you thirsty.
Well, the big question is people who know you and see you, why do you behave like you do? Why are you so happy? Because
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not, I'm not that
Yeah,
happy.
yeah, yeah. All day long. I agree. It's the joy of the Lord, right? You get to tell him, hey man, there's so all the verses do something, right? Like when I'm thinking about, oh man, I'm starting to worry about something, the scripture comes, hey, today has enough trouble for itself. It's not adding another cubit to your life because you worry. So then I'm like, hey, you're right. It's not adding anything. So why am I gonna do it?
For me, that's one day at a time. And
Yes, sir.
when we look back on those things, the verse before it, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his
Mhm.
righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. I need
Yes,
to
sir.
keep it really simple, Pastor, because I have a
Yeah.
brilliant mind that carries me away to the wrong direction every time. And the gratitude that I hear from you really helps me in my walk because we can take that for granted. The Snicker bar analogy was really a good one.
Thanks.
Juan, I'm curious about how you take your thoughts captive, because there's going to be a lot of thoughts. The enemy will try to put intrusive thoughts into your head. There's going to be all kinds of distractions throughout the day. So how do you take your thoughts captive to the Lord?
Uh, I used to almost like literally get a thought, like that's gonna sound funny, but I used to take it captive as I would sit and I would like grab a hold of the thought and then I would literally like pull it down. In other words, like I'm gonna give you an example, right? And then I would run it through the obedience of Christ because that's what it says. So I've made this distinction. Feelings aren't always true. Feelings aren't always true. Just because you have a feeling, now God gave us feelings, but one thing I try my best to do is that I always tell people feelings are an indicator of what's going on in your heart. That's it. It's kind of like the light in the car is telling you you need gas, so you go get gas, and if you don't go get gas, then it's going to get complicated, or you're going to be more frustrated, or you're going to run out of gas and stay stuck. So when I usually beliefs create emotions that drive behavior. He says your mind, will, and emotions. I'm going to give you two things. The first thing I do is when I get a feeling, I think to myself, why am I feeling this way? I always ask myself, why are you feeling this way? Is it, sometimes you're like extremely tired and you get edgy or agitated. And so then I go, yeah, it's me. And then I run it through Christ, right? Or I used to do the mind, will, and emotions. In other words, how you think, will is desires, and emotions. So when I get a feeling, I go, what desire is causing this feeling? And when I ask myself what desire is causing this feeling, if it's not a desire that lines up with the will of God or God's desire, then I try to change my mind about what it is that I've been thinking that's causing that desire. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to challenge everybody because the more you practice something, now it's like automatic. It's like a metabolism. My son is a bodybuilder and he says, hey, dad, he goes, He eats a lot of small meals, like 6 meals a day. He says to keep his metabolism. So when he eats, it just kicks it out. He goes, it doesn't even like if I eat a chocolate cake, it just kicks it out because he's made his metabolism work. And so when you practice some of these things, like practice listening, it's a whole nother chapter in the book about listening. The more you practice some of these things, you just become, you're not trying to do something. Like now, the thought gets captive. I tried to explain it to the best of my ability. Is this something that God thinks and he desires that he wants to do? All of those little things, however that works for you. But once you practice it for a while, you just become. You're not trying to forgive, you just forgive.
I like that a lot. One, what helps me is to think about how I'm going to feel after I do something or don't do it. As a mentor of mine says, we can fall in love with a lot of things, but we get to choose what we do with that feeling. And
oh yeah.
I can have irrational exuberance on a lot of stuff that hasn't worked out too well. So I like what you're saying. It's a great check. Does God want me to do this or not?
All day long. Does it line up? One day I was in the car and I was upset. And the Lord told me to start singing. Now that's going to sound funny. I'm in the car, I'm upset with my wife, and I start singing. It's Carrie Job, You're My Healer. She looks at me. She starts laughing. The Lord says to me, Juan, he wanted to show me something. He said, every time you get upset, if you start singing, you will relearn how to get angry. And I was like, what? It was like mind blowing. It was like so simple. And obviously I don't sing now when I get angry, but I understood what he was saying. He said, you have to unlearn. So every time I got angry, I would ask, why do I get angry like this? Where did I learn this from? Who taught me this? Where did I pick it up? Because if you're born again, that means you have to unlearn and relearn. But you should identify where you learned it at, because you got to run what you're saying is. A lot of times people are thinking they're living a truth that's actually a lie that they believed is true. So now they're living it. But who told you that? Remember Jesus asked Pontius Pilate, did somebody else tell you that I'm a king, or are you saying it? And so where did you learn your things from? Even as you continue to walk, I still do this in my life. Is this something I picked up somewhere? Did my parents teach me this? Did I learn it because of my culture? Or is this something Jesus taught me to do? And if it's not, a good sign is that it's killing, stealing, and destroying the very things. It's not giving it abundant life.
We're all thinking about that. That was really good. Yeah, that's why there's silence on this, and we're processing that. And I think it's it's really good to hear that.
Yeah,
I know that
I'm excited about this stuff. Yes, sir.
You and George often cite John 10:10, and I love that because it's such a powerful verse.
Oh yeah, it's a really good verse. Yep. I've been really big on John 8. I the knowledge of the truth. If you remember, he says you continue in my word. So meaning that you have to know the truth, you have to continue in the word. It's not a one-time thing. You can believe, but to be a disciple, you got to continue in that word.
Mm-hmm.
That means you could believe. That means you could actually believe and not continue in the word and not actually be a disciple, which is wild, right? You're like, what? He's like, yeah. He tells the Jews that. He's like, hey, you got to believe and continue in it, right?
Yep.
And right after that, if you remember, it's the Jerry Springer show, where the Pharisees are like, that's our father and all that. And he's like, no, it's not true. This is actually your father, the devil, Oh, could you imagine being in that Jerry Springer show? Oh, no.
Pretty nuts. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he's like, you're saying all that, but the truth is not in you. And then he says, my word has no place in you. Man,
wow.
That means you could actually know about the word out here in the outside part, in your head knowledge, but not actually know the word because it's not hidden in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't become with it. And so you'll never experience freedom.
Yeah. Juan, thank you so much for doing the show today. George and I have loved having you on as a guest, and you've got a lot of enthusiasm and joy, and you've inspired us, and thank you so much for telling your story.
Thanks, Juan. It was great.
Thank you so much, man. Hope you guys get Prison Break.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
book.
Thank you so much. That wraps up Real Recovery for this episode. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.